Welcome to PowerUp podcast, the podcast that seeks to empower and dismantle, giving us the power and confidence to question, deconstruct, rebuild, and expand in life. I'm your host, AmaRouge, voiceover and multidisciplinary artist, wellbeing advocate, food and book geek with over 14 years of movement-centered experience.
I am your host, Mesma, artist, choreographer, yogi and coach with a passion for alchemy, creativity, transformation and workplace wellness.
We recognise that we can't dismantle and empower or be empowered without first learning ourselves, diving deeper to unlearn the harmful, restrictive and unprogressive. It's an ongoing practice and journey for us all, which is why we created this podcast.
Our show features guests doing the work to enlighten, deconstruct and power up in their own magical ways.
We're going to be having conversations around the power of healing, transformation, well-being and creativity, and how they feed our personal and collective evolution, how they help us power up.
We are back.
That was a really subdued
entry. The Season 7 theme tune.
Thank God it's not that, right, listeners? We're still going with our brilliant intro that we have.
We do love our intro.
Yeah, we do. It's good, isn't it?
And we do love you, our listeners. We've missed you. We hope you've missed us too.
Yeah, we hope you have. We're back with an amazing season for you. We've just loved recording this season so far. And I mean, we say this every season, and it is true of every season, which is why we make the podcast, to be honest. But yeah, this season has been so nourishing and so alive.
Yeah, it's the best season yet.
Isn't it?
But that was the case with the season previous and the season previous and the season previous. All 7 seasons have been the best season yet, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So true. And so, yeah, we're really excited that you're choosing to join us for this season 7, lucky number 7.
And this is episode 62. I mean, that also blows my mind that we have recorded 62. Well, actually, not more, because this is us. This is us kind of closing our recordings for season 7, right? So
yeah,
we've actually recorded 70 episodes now. And what a joy it has been. I just want a moment to just celebrate, first of all, the 3 themes of Power Up podcast. So unlearning, creativity and powering up. Those as themes are so nourishing to speak to people about and to be thinking about. And yeah, it's such a joy to be with you here, Amma. And thank you, listeners, because we couldn't do it without you.
Igualmente. Feel exactly the same. We're diving into creativity as a tool for revolution. We're then going to take you into conversations around mental health. And we all know about the importance of mental health now, I think, in a much more vocal way and aware way than probably ever before, actually, I think, in the generations that we're in. And in the time that we're in. So, of course, a really important one to speak to, and personally for both of us. And then we'll be rounding the season off with the power of language with 3 incredible guests. I mean, each guest in every theme this season is incredible. And we just can't wait for you to hear what we have in store for you, because there's so much nourishment and wisdom and insight and provocation and sustenance here for you, and unlearning and creativity and powering up. So yeah, it feels like a really special one, and you're really, really in for a treat.
And I love the interconnectedness of the 3 themes and the guests, how they kind of each speak to mental health awareness, and they each speak to, actually, I really feel like a really strong theme has been self-care as a tool for revolution, as well as creativity as a tool for revolution.
Yeah, I agree. More and more, actually, we're starting to hear that dialogue that actually rest and self-care is a form of resistance. It's a form of revolution against a society that constantly tells you that you must be doing, and doing is the only way to be productive. And
Right.
of course, we know we need to pay the bills, right? We
Yeah.
know we need to, but we also know it's not sustainable to
Yeah.
constantly be doing and outsourcing our energy. And we also know that is not the only way to be productive.
Mm,
Productivity looks like a lot of different things. And in order
yeah.
to do, we have to allow ourselves to be as well. And that's also one of the most beautiful parts of being alive, is to be.
Right. Yes. It's making me think of two things. One is that I do find the more that I rest, the more that I'm able to be productive when I work, and
Mm,
also to kind of think smart, to kind of go for that less is more of applying for the projects that are bigger, having the self-esteem to ask for the projects that really honor my worth and my
mm,
value. But also this thing of being, that can be in multiple ways. So like the art of play, the art of creativity in terms of the revolution can be connecting to our joy. Last night, so I'm in New York at the moment. And it really is on a sort of journey of investment into my creativity and into to to me being able to, again, it kind of goes back to this self-care of, as a choreographer and as a teacher of dance, I really felt this pull to reinvest and to study and to train so that I can be in that state of giving again.
mm-hmm,
Over a year we can be so kind of outward give, and actually that then there has to be that kind of like recharge and refuel, both in terms of rest but also in terms of kind of creative inspiration. And so I'm really here for creative inspiration. But yesterday I went to my favorite salsa club in the world, the Taj Lounge, on a Monday in New York, with live music, very often like famous musicians from the 70s. It's just heaven. And I'm on this journey of understanding for myself, what do I mean by the call of the drums, in terms of I feel intuitively that, so you know how water responds to music, and like there's all these kind of studies where, like, if you play different frequencies, like for example if you put salt on a plate and you play a different frequency, it will kind of come out in a different frequency.
the salt crystals will group in different patterns.
Yeah, exactly. It's so beautiful. Link in the show notes, listeners, if you want to check that out. But I'm starting to think of that in terms of intuition and how we move as human beings, that it's like we listen to the call of the drums and we kind of respond to that musical call. Um, and for me, that's in everything. That's kind of how I work intuitively. It's like listening to the rhythm within myself and then taking the actions, or listening to the rhythm of the space and like, what does this space need for me to enter into it?
Mm,
Do I balance it? But it was just such a joy state, and that creative revolution of really being, I feel my most me expression is salsa, not doing a show, not teaching a class, but just being in the club, having that call and response game with another person, with the rhythm of the drums kind of speaking to us. And it was really that state of flow and that state of oneness for me last night. And that is why I want to exist, those moments of existence.
100%. That reminds me of something that Anna, who is one of our guests, on the theme of creativity as a tool for revolution, and she spoke to this knowing that revolution and protest can be something that happens en masse. It can be something that takes place in the streets. It can be something that is led by people holding placards and chanting, and many iterations of that. But it can also be something that happens on a personal level. It can also be something that's more quiet, and that's dictated by how we choose to lead our lives and what choices we make and how we show up in the world. on a
Mm.
daily basis. And I feel like you speak into that joy that you were experiencing in just allowing yourself to be
Mm.
in that moment, be in that aliveness of salsa and everything that it is, it is a type of revolution in a society that's always telling you that there needs to be productivity attached to what you're doing, or there needs to be a
Mm.
reason you're doing that, especially as an artist, as a mover, as a dancer, as a choreographer, as a director. It's almost inextricably woven together that anything you then do that is to do with movement, people automatically assume it has to be linked to your work. It has to be work
Mm.
based.
Right.
And so I think subverting that, or choosing to not only feed that idea of how you can engage with movement, dance, music in your life, that is a type of protest. It's a type of revolution, even if that's not the outward reason for it. It's
Mm.
definitely a way of you saying, no, actually, I want to do life on my own terms. And I'm starting to realize that this is a vital part of how I want it to look for me and what that is.
Yes.
I feel like for me as well, like, I mean, of course, it's all one big learning, isn't it? And we always say this, and we know that it's all life is a continuous learning journey. It's a continuous unlearning journey, and so we're definitely still in that, of course, as are all of you. I really feel like one of the big things for me this year that I'm unlearning and learning is this: what does life look like for me, and what does that revolution look like in the way I'm choosing to live my life
Mm.
going forward, um, compared to how I've lived it up to this point.
Yes.
Some of those shifts are happening because my consciousness is broadening and deepening through therapy, through more reading and research, through more podcasts, through more workshops I've been attending. Some of that is because I'm not as deeply in survival mode as I have been for a lot of my
Mm.
adult life, and so I actually have a bit more space and time to play with compared to maybe what I had 5 years ago or 4 years
Mm.
ago. Or, there's different things that are feeding into that. Healing is also feeding into that. My how I'm healing and the things I'm healing, and so all of that is feeding into, I guess, my personal revolution, and of course that
Yes.
has a knock-on effect. Uh, Externally, it has a knock-on effect outside of me in the way I relationship with others, in the work
Mm.
I do, in what I'm available for and what I'm not available for. And so, yeah, there's definitely more than one way to have revolution.
Yeah. So true. It's making me think about, we've kind of talked about our experiences training in dance, of like sometimes, having teachers that might not have had our best interests at heart, or have kind of said particular things that really stayed with us. And
Mm,
sometimes I think, like, some of the things, the things that we might kind of define as negative that people have said, have actually almost like given me that inspiration to prove them wrong.
mm,
Um, but also sometimes people have said things that have really caused harm. And
mm,
again, I think this goes back to mental health, of why as a teacher we have this great responsibility to look after our own mental health, so that we can be a teacher in those spaces and be,
mm.
whether it's a mentor or a support, but really be able to have the best interests of those students and their growth at heart, and
Yeah.
not be projecting anything other
Yes.
onto it. Yeah. And then I think for me that also links into the power of language, of how words can build people up, and words can also cause great harm.
Yeah.
And I think this unlearning, there's so much language, or huge, almost like universal big bangs happening in my brain as I unlearn language, because I'm really
Mm,
understanding, right, the power of language, but also how it's almost like the language can get inside our head and then
yes.
dictate how we live our life. That's not really true to our unique soul purpose or soul truth and who we
Yeah.
are and what we're here to do, but also doesn't lend to us just being a happy human being. And like you said, when we are happy human beings, that creates so many ripples in, because we can listen, we can be conscious, we can understand other human beings, we can share a life experience in a way that's about us, our collective evolution rather than survival mode. So we are opening this season with the theme of creativity as a tool for revolution. And there is a quote that I am obsessed with. It is Bertolt Brecht. It was a wonderful friend who kind of put me onto this quote, and I would just love to open with: art is not a mirror to reflect reality, but a hammer with which to shape it. I love that quote because I think there's so much power in how we can use art as a tool for hope, and that can be the revolution. But I've also been thinking about how we can use art as a tool for our healing. You know, that I've had so many moments as a performer where I've been kind of invited to essentially put my experiences, my traumatic experiences, my not so happy memories onto the stage, and then just kind of left with like, thank you for your show and good night, you know, bye, now you go home, and there not being that kind of care. But I'm really realizing that there's another way, which I call embodied alchemy, this kind of way of moving out the stuff that we are experiencing and expressing that kind of, as Tony Stewart references in the Power of Language series, as artists are often very highly sensitive beings, you know, and we kind of really feel the experiences of the world, and we feel them very deeply and internally. And for me, this practice of embodied alchemy is about getting all of those emotions in motion, and that might be through movement, that might be through voice, that might be through word, that might be through painting, but that there's a power in our expression of those deep feelings, and almost like alchemizing those emotions so that we can then show up in the world without having to kind of be in that space, in that heaviness of everything that we feel. And I'm finding that when I do that practice, I like to often do that practice in the morning, that then I can show up as my whole, you know, as my whole self, essentially, as kind of without coming to a space with beliefs about whether or not I'm good enough, whether or not I belong. Maybe like, you know, with the sensitivity of different things that may have happened to me or I may have experienced as happening to me, that I can kind of have much more of a, almost like a zoomed out perspective of things, and make sense of the world differently by being creative. So for me, that's how creativity is a tool for evolution, or at its real heart, it's getting out and expressing allows me to really show up as my whole self.
I actually think that art is made to do both. Personally, for me, I feel like
Agreed.
it's there to reflect what is happening, but it's also there to then shape the next part of it. I'm only just now, for example, coming into making my own work, and what I really want my work to do is bring the audience into, all the participants into a space of questioning and reflection and provocation, actually, as well, for them to then think, okay, what next? If not this, then what? I feel that in order to shift things, or to leave or open that space for that provocation, and for them almost to fill in the blanks and start to tell the rest of the story, there is that need to reflect what's happening first. And so I know that I want my work to do that, because I think that's how we continue to unlearn, right? And that's how we then continue to empower ourselves. We create what we want to see, we create what we want to hear. It impacts people. It has that ripple effect. We shift forwards, hopefully. The content of the work and the content of my work, I hope will, I guess, almost create lots of mini revolutions within people. And as we've said, that can look really differently across person to person.
Yeah.
But I also hope that the way in which I make work will be a revolution of sorts. You know, I think I've been thinking a lot about this, about how I work and how long, for example, things take me compared to maybe the average person. And if I'm comparing myself to whoever the average person is, since I was a child, things take me longer. I take more time to complete X than, you know, person Y over there. And I used to think, oh, I need to get quicker. I need to be able to become more succinct with this. Why is it taking me so long to do this thing? And actually, now I'm just arriving at a place where I'm like, that's just you and that's how you work. And yes, it takes you longer, but in comparison to who? You might still be shorter in comparison to person Z. And, you know, it's all okay. Like, it's your practice, it's the way you work. And so I've been really thinking about, as I'm stepping into this new season of starting to want to make my own work and musing around what I want to put out there and bring people into, how can I do that in a way that is caring, that is slower, because that's how I work, that also builds care into the process as well as aftercare. So, for example, I've noticed after I do 3 days on the trot, I actually really need a day to pause and just to rest or just to reflect. And how can I actually, and I was like, oh no, you're going to really struggle because that's not how things are done. That's not how people work generally. And what about when you have to work, you know, on something for 6 weeks consecutively or 2 weeks? And I was like, oh, but hold on, when you're making your work, you can decide and dictate the process. And people might say, well, you know, you don't have enough money to do that, or you're going to use up more of your funding, or you're going to, because you're building in all these extra days. But so be it, right? That's how I realized I work best.
Absolutely.
And that's how I want people to feel working with me, that they have that time to rest, that they have time to process, that they have, whilst also not disrupting our flow.
Yeah. And possibly helping, aiding to flow better, right? By doing that, not just, you know, that actually then you'll show up ready to work and
able
really
to, right?
We've actually, I've just got Arts Council funding for my show, The Rainbow Butterfly, to finalise it and to teach it to a group of performers. And we have put in physio, time for them to have physio, time for them to have coaching.
Amazing.
And also shorter work weeks, because why do we feel that to be, you know, we have to like squeeze the most out of the thing, when actually, you know, there's evidence that creativity, often our best creative ideas happen when we're bored. But yet we sort of put this pressure on ourselves to always be productive. Well, if creativity happens when you're bored, then how can you always be go go go?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Something else I've just been reflecting on is, in terms of creativity as a tool for revolution, is kind of historically how it's been used. You know, for example, capoeira was kind of this disguised martial training that was literally used as a tool for revolution. It was kind of used to keep people's bodies strong, as well as, you know, to actually be able to fight. I've been thinking about, like, for example, songs, like, you know, how often in kind of the very early days of samba, the content of those songs was actually speaking of revolution, and how I think creativity, you know, music, painting, movement, it all,
carnival, masquerade, when you think about the roots of it and the way in certain mass they would cover themselves with molasses or coal to heighten their skin tone, their melanin. So ultimately, as a way to celebrate their identity, I agree with you. Creativity is a tool for evolution. It's been there from forever, from day dot, right?
And I think, like, bringing that to the now, we are living in these very strange times with, well, in the UK certainly, a very horrendous. Am I allowed to be political on here? Okay, I'm going to keep my political views ish vague, but we're living with a government with very questionable views on a lot of things, and
dickheads.
Yeah. And I believe that now more than ever we need to speak about mental health, and now more than ever we need creativity, and now more than ever we can use our language to really unlearn this world where we are taught that success is based on money, and where we are taught that success is based on a form of productivity that doesn't actually honor and listen to our well-being and our health and our families and our joy.
Thank you for listening. You can connect to us and our guests via the links in each episode's show notes. Before you go, we invite you to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the goodness to come. And if you enjoyed today, perhaps tell a friend to tell a friend. We are always grateful for you, our listeners, for our fabulous guests, and to everyone who has contributed to and been a part of our journey here.
Our music is by Tomo Carter. Everything else is brought to you by us, the PowerUp Power Team.
I'm Mesma.
I am AmaRouge. And we are PowerUp Podcast.